Okay then, so in today's video we're going to look at the switch statement, which is another conditional statement, kind of like the if statement but works a bit differently. So with the if statement, where you have, if value 1 is greater than value 2, do this, else do this. That's an if statement that we've looked at. Switch statement's a little bit different. You start with the switch keyword, you tell it a value to check, and if that value matches a particular case which you've offered up, it'll run the code. You can have a default case which it'll run if they aren't met, or you can have no default, it just won't do anything if one of the cases isn't met. Okay, so that won't make much sense without us actually taking a look at it. So what we'll do, we'll get a project started, make sure it's a C# application, it's a console application, and then you're inside static void main. Okay, so we'll jump right in, and what we're going to do, we're going to ask the user for their name, and if their name is Anthony or Andrea, it'll run a case, else it'll say something different. Okay, so we need somewhere to store that name, so we'll start off with a string, we'll call it name, and then we'll ask the user for their name, of course. So console.write. So remember the difference between write and write line. Write, it'll keep the cursor on the same line as the statement. Write line, it'll put a break and the user will be writing on the next line. Okay, what is your name? I'll put a space at the end before the quote so the result that they're typing in isn't right against the question mark. Right, okay, so the user is now going to input their answer and we need to store it. So name equals console.readline. And now we've got their name, we can start our switch statement. So switch, open brackets, and this is where we put the value that we want to check. In this case it's name. Then we open our code block, and now we give the switch statement different cases. What you must remember is the cases, well, the results are case sensitive. So if we do case Anthony, let's say, and the user types in Anthony at this stage, it will not have the same case because it's case sensitive. So ways to get around that is just stuff like to lower the result and then make sure that you deal with all your cases in lower case. But that's something we'll look at in a different time. Right now, you need to remember those case sensitive, and based off the value given, it'll run the case that matches. So what we'll do then, we'll do case Anthony normal colon, and then we'll just put console.writeLine, your name is Anthony, and this is the first case, semicolon. Now what you must do with a case is you must end it with a break or a return. For the most part, breaks pretty much better practice and it's more likely what you need to do. So we'll run a break, semicolon, and we'll offer up another case. So case, open quotes, Andrea, console.writeLine, your name is Andrea, and this is the second case, semicolon. Then we must enter our break, and now what we're going to do, we're going to have a default case. Now you don't have to have a default case, but if you don't have a default case and neither of these cases are matched, it'll just carry on without giving the result. The default case, however, if these cases aren't matched, is what it'll run instead. So console.writeLine, you entered a name which is not Anthony or Andrea, and this is the default case, semicolon. Like the cases, we have to end the default with a break, and that's it. Right, so what we're going to do, Control F5, and we'll fire up our program. So what is your name? And we'll jump straight to Andrea. Your name is Andrea, and this is the second case. So as you'll notice, it didn't run case 1, it completely skips it and it runs case 2. Okay, so let's do that again. Control F5, and this time we'll put in a name that isn't matched. Okay, so this should in theory run the default case. So you entered a name which is not Anthony or Andrea, and this is a default case. Right, now let's say for this case here, we actually just want to say correct, and we also wanted this case here to say correct. Now this is doubling up. We don't need to do this. There's obviously a neater way to do this. And what you can do is, if you want several cases to have the same response if they're met, all you do, delete that case, you just do that. So case, the value, colon, case, the value, colon, and then what you want the result to be from that case. So let's try that out. What is your name? Correct. So despite the fact that immediately under that case line is this one, it knows to run this case when that case is met. So these are good for doing certain checks on logic or just certain checks on a value to make sure that something is met and it'll do a certain result based off that. They're quite straightforward. They're quite useful to know about. And it's one of the two conditional statements in C#, the other being the if statement. Okay, so that was just a quick video to show you switch cases. I hope it helped. Go mess about with it a little bit and play around with it. You can do it with different types of values. It doesn't have to be strings. You can do it with booleans and whether the case is true or false. You can do it with integers and whether a particular number's met. But remember, it is case sensitive.